Hi, my name is Richard Blank. I'm going to be a guest on the Online Prosperity Show with my good friend Prosper. I'm going to share some tips and tricks and why my experience in Costa Rica has been a one in a million journey. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to sharing this with you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a phenomenal guest joining us. Richard, how are you doing today?
I'm doing much better now, my good friend Prosper. I'm so happy to be on your podcast today, and I can't wait to share a lot of tips and tricks to you and your amazing Australian audience.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. We've been having a chat, and you are more Aussie than I am. Your favorite band is In Excess, isn't it?
Oh, it's been that for an exceptionally long time. I love In Excess. In fact, saw them a couple times. My favorite show was July 15th in 97 in Phoenix. It was a small show, about 2,000 people. And you know, In Excess is cool with their crowd. There wasn't security there. So I paid $100 for a $20 front row ticket. I was right there to shake Hutch's hand. And I also got to shake John Ferris's hand at the end of the show. And listen, I grew up listening to In Excess, and it's happy music for me. It's always playing when I'm driving to work with my top down. Suicide Blonde, you always hear it.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing all the Aussies are now ears picked, waiting to hear what it is that you are about to say. And for those that are meeting Richard for the very first time, not only is he a huge fan of In Excess, but he's the Chief Executive Officer of Costa Rica's Call Center. He's also a visionary leader and a speaker who's been making waves in the business world. That's the reason why we have him on the show today, so that he can give us a glimpse of what it is that he does and how that could be of help to you. Now, Richard, we could go on and talk about all your accolades and everything else that comes along with it. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey up until becoming CEO of Costa Rica's Call Center.
Oh, Prosper, I'm a long shot. My stars were aligned. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Northeast Philadelphia, actually. When I graduated the proud Abington High School back in 91, I decided to double down on my favorite class, which was Spanish. Went to the University of Arizona and studied Spanish. Now, a lot of my friends, Prosper, they fall into the traps of family guilt and pressures to study certain things and go into family businesses. I guess I had to get past parents' guilt and be a little selfish because I had a vision quest. I didn't want to put myself in a box where I could earn a living but be miserable. And I understood that second languages like yourself, my friend from Zimbabwe, speak so many languages, which to me bears the mark of higher education. And so if I could show that good faith, maybe doors will be open and I could find some wind in this world and get some momentum. And so little did I know that I was able to intern for Telemundo during college. Post-grad, I worked for the importers of Corona beer. And when I was 27 years old, Prosper, I was given a one in a million opportunity to move to Costa Rica for just a couple months and work in my friend's call center. Well, stayed there for 4 years, learned the business from the inside out. And the one rule that I learned, and it's not C-level, is to make sure that the people are treated with dignity. And if you do, they're going to stay. You'll reduce attrition, you'll have fidelity, and people are going to fight for you. And so when I was sitting amongst the proletariat in those cubicles, watching these brilliant agents converting their calls, I realized that I had a calling, that I could start a business, but I wanted to do it a little bit differently. I wanted to pay it forward, Prosper. I wanted to make people more self-reliant and self-confident and promote them so they become future leaders, especially since I'm a guest in this country as you are in Australia. All we want to do is be very thankful, be a strong member of a community, and to share what we learned growing up and combining it to where we are now. And if you can bring all those good things together, you have a really tasty soup. And so that's the kind of thing that I've been looking for.
Absolutely. I quite like that, because at the end of the day, so many people grow up and maybe follow through to what their parents want them to become, or what society just places on them. And you know what, Richard, I actually blame Hollywood for this. because Hollywood presents a lifestyle where you're born, you go to kinder, you go to high school, you get your first love, you go to university, then your heart is broken a little bit, but then after that you graduate from university, you get a job, you get married. Everything is sort of like in a linear fashion. And if you really watch it on cable TV, it's usually within 35 minutes plus commercials. And that's what a lot of people want eventually in the end. But you chose a whole different route. Did you have any sort of motivation, or did you have any sort of inspiration, or people that actually made you see that this was possible? Because this wouldn't have been just around you or your own, like you say, calling.
That's kind of interesting. You're talking about someone's life wrapped up in a long breath and a half an hour. The one thing you forgot, Prosper, was coming of age moments. The time when you beat up the bully, saved a kitten. You're talking about fell in love for the first time. Okay, I'm cool with that too. These should be your crossroads where you're making ethical decisions and long-term play decisions. Things where you can look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that you might be making some sacrifices now, but you'll be winning in the long term. So, sort of mentors that I have, sure. Sports coaches, my dear friends that said, go, Richard, go, when we couldn't compare notes because they're doctors and attorneys and they're doing some great stuff as engineers. I couldn't do that. I didn't have the grades for Ivy League, but they were fascinated for the fact that I was drinking life. And when I was in high school, and I do mention Abington a lot, I am a proud Hall of Famer actually, but I was given a college recommendation letter from the principal and my dedicated Spanish teacher to offset my poor grades. They got me into college. And if that didn't happen, that momentum wouldn't have happened where I would have found some best friends, moved abroad, married the girl of my dreams, and started this company and on prospectors, podcasts. And so it's interesting how certain decisions that you make have those consequences. And always beware of what you wish for, because one day if you get it, it might not be what you're looking for. You know, being an owner of a company has its acclimates. Sure, I got the title, I got the parking spot, the large office, the suit. Name the, you can check all the boxes. But the artists and the athletes, and even an entrepreneur like myself, we savored the day years ago when we decided to either move forward or stop. The boxer that continues those later rounds, and the artist and the individual that has to have that breakthrough and shedding some skin to get to that next level. Most people quit. And it's very, very difficult to run through first, as they say in baseball, where you have that momentum, you don't stop. And for me, there's a lot of naysayers and gray believers. You're talking about the mentors, fine, my man, but let's yin and yang it. Let's talk about the sour. Let's talk about the negative Nancy's, the Debbie Downers, and the pessimistic Patties that are out there that say, no, no, Prosper. Well, the only thing is they don't KNOW enough about my NO. So everyone needs to calm down and slow down. This is my vision quest, as you would say in Australia, your walkabout. And if you hold back somebody from getting what's inside of them to come outward in many forms of medium, could be through art and science or any ways that you can contribute, then you're holding back humanity. And so I'm not saying that I'm changing the world like an Elon Musk, but I'm doing it 150 people at a time, where I'm feeding families and I'm paying it forward and really being sincerely interested in their career growth. And so for me, golden jewels lose its luster, and prosper, I love that name, by the way. You want to be as prosperous as possible, but money's only so good, and there's only so many dinners you and I can make. It's interesting, my friend, anybody can get money, but Prosper, you and I could sit down and just, as men with depth and essence and ideas, can have the greatest conversation that won't cost money, or we can spend a wonderful afternoon together just by passing time. And so I always try to find things that have value naturally, because people can angle in and have that leverage with things that might make them more powerful, but it doesn't make them better. And so people expect certain things from a CEO. while I almost turn the tables because I show a lot of empathy. I like to break bread with people and I like to play pinball with them and give them training classes. I'm not in an ivory tower, and I hate people that are like that. Leaders are the ones amongst their people. That's what they do. And so I'll be one of the many carrying that canoe to the river. And that's just the kind of guy I am.
Absolutely, absolutely. People that literally show or help people by actually helping them instead of telling people how it's supposed to be done, etc. Now, you brought up a very interesting, topic right at the start of this question, where you talked about a rite of passage. And for a lot of people, and let's just say for the uninitiated, so many people say in the first world or in the in the Western world, they just, like we have elaborated, they just grow up without somewhat of a pattern break or something that literally takes them to the level where they now can appreciate becoming an adult or somebody of responsibility, or somebody who is actually capable of doing a whole lot, right? So that's where we find in other businesses, we've got CEOs that are fully grown babies, people that are just not doing much or showing or taking ownership of who they are and things of that nature. So would you say at some point in your transition from the time you learned Spanish to the time you are here now with that, with that CEO title, have you had somewhat of a rite of passage that you can then say it was at this pivotal moment that my life changed, and now because of that, I'm stepping into this direction?
How about this? I know when it started and it's continuing, almost like a warm breeze or just like dripping of oil that you keep collecting. You're going to make some money. When I was a little boy, and I was very fortunate to be from a very comfortable family, we would travel and we would go to Mexico. And so, besides lying on the beach and having fun at fiestas, I would be coming back with a couple dozen vocabulary words. Now, as much as it might seem like a parlor trick and cute little Richard in the corner impressing my parents' friends, when I used to meet bilingual Latinos and show them my sincere interest in Spanish, I got a lot of positive reinforcement. I got a lot of encouragement and people that were taking the time to assist me with my grammar and extended vocabulary. So I saw that spark way back in the day. Now, mind you, I'm from Eastern Europe. My family was from Romania and Russia and Germany and Poland. And so nobody in my Spanish, come the turn of the 20th century when they came to the United States, spoke Spanish. They were speaking these European languages. So I was the first one in my family to speak Spanish. Doesn't mean I'm the first bilingual individual, but it was something that after passing a couple generations, my family and certain friends couldn't understand. So I had to get that reinforcement outside of the bubble. It's like the individuals that go to the gym when no one else does, or they have a certain group of friends, runners or athletes or artists where nobody else can understand it, but that's their special friends. That's where they go. That's their book club. And so for me, I needed to be a loner in a sense. I needed to be an individual, an ace, and I had to do this by myself. Sometimes, like going to the gym, I used to go with people all the time, but then they punk out. Doesn't mean I can't go. Of course, I'm still going to go. And a lot of it's dedicated practice, either by yourself or with groups. I don't know. But I knew that this thing was a heavy haul and it was going to take time. And the greatest thing I could do is water seeks its own levels to find individuals, groups, and people that would invest in my language skills. Intercambios is what they call them. But then all the world's a stage. I mean, I have a luxury trade. I can speak Spanish, read Spanish, listen to Spanish, watch Spanish. I can do it all day long, every day, all day. And I can meet 50 people a day that can assist me with my Spanish. So it was just something that was moving so fast. It just wasn't an hour in a classroom and an hour study at night. I was living it, especially my junior year when I moved. I lived in Spain, and that was one of the best years of my life. So I went as far east as Prague, as far south as the Pink Palace in Corfu, spent a week in Amsterdam, and also was in Tangier, Morocco. So just think of all those places. I was running around for 2 months. And, this was in 93 and 94. So I was calling my parents once every couple of weeks on a payphone, but I was reading books and going to museums and seeing ruins. And it was undoubtedly the most romantic Renaissance year of my life, where I wasn't just a goofy kid anymore. I was really educating myself with the beauty of art and life, and seeing that there's some other cats that were out there that were much more educated and refined than I was. And I had to step my game up. I mean, it was some extremely impressionable people from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And so I got out of that Philly bubble. And just like a hero's journey, you're supposed to go slay a dragon and come back with tales to assist the town that you left. And so I would come back to Arizona and Philadelphia, such stories of my adventures. And I just wanted to let them know that there are places out there that you could grow and you could see. And learn that at a very young age. And that's the kind of thing that really changed my life and made me very humble, made me very lucid, and exceptionally appreciative to new cultures, especially when, and you know this, Prosper, when someone invites you into their home for dinner. That's undoubtedly the most largest compliment you could get when you're dining with someone's family. And so I treasure those moments. I almost have like a sheet on how many times I've been invited into people's homes just to remind myself on how wonderful this world is.
Absolutely. I quite like that because what this whole strings together is the power of taking yourself out of your comfort zone. First of all, by learning a new language, and then second of all, really redefining yourself in a world that had you not extended or expanded yourself, you wouldn't have actually reached. Now, so many people just grow up in the same neighborhood, same postcode. They marry in the same neighborhood and same postcode, and they never really venture out except when they're going to buy bread and milk. And half of the time, that's when there's a circus in town and the girls never come back. So many people
That
have
was good.
really done much of that, and you've created this. You have now become the epitome of what it symbolizes to go out and be, do, and have whatever it is that you want. But what's a typical day or in your life look like right now as a CEO of a successful call center?
Before I tell you my special day, I just want you and your audience to know I don't want them to be like me. They need to be like themselves. We're all like the Justice League. We're all superheroes, Prosper, but each one of us has our own special power. So if somebody is a homebody, in fact, when I go back to Abington, Northeast Philadelphia, and my friends that still live there, I'm envious of them. It's one of my favorite places in the world, and they feel happy home, cozy home. They know the streets, know the neighborhood. They grew up there, and for me, that's the greatest magic dust I could ever put on myself when I go back to Philadelphia. I very much recharge my batteries. And so, once again, my friend, it's okay if someone's ship doesn't want to leave the port. And some people, I can't you really use the word afraid. They just never experienced high seas before. So when you're asking me about comfort zones, what comfort zones? Unless Mike Tyson is punching me in the face, that's uncomfortable. But everything else mentally is not uncomfortable for me. I can handle mental challenges, but physical stuff, that's physiological. But you have to embrace it. And you know that if you can confront your fear and you start dancing with it, and then you fall in love with it, and then you embrace it, that's considered the burn in the gym, the tattoo ink. These are the sort of things that you need to do in order to get to that next level. I never really liked black olives before until I went to Spain. Now I'm obsessed with them. But my point being is, I'm getting too old to be afraid. And I have such good friends, including you, that support me and vice versa. And I really don't need to prove anything to anybody else anymore, except to myself. And I've accomplished enough goals to where I feel I want to, as I mentioned, pay it forward. And so for me, being here was destiny. I was catching up with my momentum of where I was going to be, and I knew it. And so when I got this encouragement from my friends and peers, it was a good thing. And life is meant to be lived. And how many stories have we read about knights or princes leaving castles to slay dragons and save princesses? I wanted a real life. I wanted something to where I knew that I tried and that I went all the way. But where were you swimming? I don't know. But the most important thing, my man, is to get in the water. But prior to getting the water, working out to get into the water, prior to even the working out, the mindset to know that you're going to be doing this. It's the first step every day to get you there. It's those rainy Wednesdays you don't want to get out of bed. I'm the first one out of bed. Stop making excuses. Enough of this nonsense already. So at the end of the day, if I show up on time, if I do my job and I'm prosperous and I have a company, I can't fake it and I can't angle it or spin it. Sometimes it's just done on pure merit. Sometimes it's just what it takes to keep banging away on that rock till you chip it away. And so I always respected the bricklayer because at the end of the day, you really see the work. And so I myself, when I peer over the floor and I see the 100 agents there working away and everyone's doing well and they're in the game room or breaking bread, that's a moment for me to take it all in, to make my circle complete in that moment, to really slow down and say, look where I've come, where am I going to be? But let's just enjoy this little cool spot that I'm in for a second. And just, it's you get these tingles. And if you can get these butterflies, obviously your sixth sense and the gods and the spirituality is telling you, my man, you're doing it right. So I'm trying to get that every day. And so that's what I'm trying to let your audience know, just to enjoy the ride. If money is what you want, money is what you'll get. Money, 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 whatever. I'd rather have best friends. I want good days. I want to see people smile. Those are the things that are fun today. And I think it really gives me a lot more balance and focus and really doesn't give me a heavy heart. I don't like to carry certain weight. If I can let things go, I can rise. If that makes sense. And I hope that your audience understands that I'm giving that very general so I can relate to each one of you.
Oh, absolutely. And we really appreciate, because it's not every day that you have a chance to, hear it from people that have actually gone the way and now they're just sending the elevator down, just so you can also be, rise up. So from what I'm hearing, there seems to be a lot of values and there's a really big mission that you are moving forward with, especially at Costa Rica's call center there. So tell us a little bit about your mission and values behind the call center and what really sets you apart in this industry.
Prosper, I'm going to tell you 5 campaigns we don't do. Sports books, casino, stocks, pharmacies, or sweepstakes. Unlike what you've seen in Hollywood with the Wolf of Wall Street, Boiler Room, Glengarry, Glen Ross, you name it, we don't sling stock. Some people do. I just don't. This is a strict Catholic country. I want to make sure people can go home and tell their parents what they do for a living. We're a near shore to the United States, bilingual dedicated call center. We focus on sales, appointment setting, lead generation, inbound customer support, non-voice back office support, IT support. A lot of people today focus on AI and omni-channel non-voice, which is chat and email. I can't stress enough the art of speech and the value of interpersonal communication for retention, upsell, referral, and potentially avoiding an exit interview. And so these are sort of soft skills that people can use inside and outside the office in order to not really necessarily manipulate a conversation, but if I can prolong it, if I can ask clarifying questions. Prosper, if we can have specific checkpoints every 30 seconds to a minute to ensure that we're on the same page. There's certain strategic vocabulary that I encourage my bilingual agents to use from the thesaurus. I love similes. Instead of using the word help, for an example, Prosper, I'll suggest using assist, guide, and lend a hand. Instead of excuse me, Prosper, for my clarification. And since you have such an exotic name, we would be spelling it with a military alphabet. to ensure that that email does not bounce back. And if I happen to speak to an associate of yours prior to a transfer, I'll make sure to give them a positive escalation. I'll do it verbally, let them know they're great because they gave me the pass to pitch. I'll also do it in writing at the end when I'm giving you the meeting minutes and the follow-up. So when I happen to call your company back when I'm building my pipeline, this individual will remember me, thank me, add momentum, and give me more company culture. And even one step prior to that, when you're prospecting for the first time, the first thing you should do is a perfect first impression. Give a company name spike. Say, hey, how's Online Prosperity Show doing today? Say it better than the person answering the phone. Knock them out of that zone and that trance. So instead of them saying, yeah, we're good, thanks, telemarketer, click, might sound like you've been there before. And so you're looking to buy 30 seconds of time. And if you can do some due diligence prior to the call to learn about a LinkedIn profile, a website like you and I did, Prosper, prior to speaking with one another, I mean, we know each other's bios by heart. And so that can avoid small talk, that can give you major forward momentum, separate you from others that are trying to angle in there, and really showing sincere sincerity when you're leaving a custom-made voicemail or writing a really descriptive email to somebody and talking about how cool Zimbabwe is and things like that. I might just get your attention. Just like if you wrote about my pinball machines, you'll definitely give a minute of my undivided attention. And so I've seen that these things don't compromise ethics, values, or morals, Prosper. But what they do is they get the agent to be more engaged in the conversation, be more in the now, and being spontaneous, because there's a 10% zig and a zag that someone might throw at you. And if you're just reading script, you're going to miss it. Like if a dog is barking in the background, why don't you stop, drop, and roll for a second? Let Prosper know you love doggies. Ask its breed, what's its name, and how old's your puppy? It's not a puppy, you know it's 10 years old. But that's the kind of thing where Prosper is going to put the dog outside, realize it was being loud, come back again. We anchor on just one of many things. And here we continue. And you wonder why my business grows. And you wonder why people, instead of making 100 phone calls a day, they make about 80. Why? Because the metrics move. If I'm on a phone call with you 5 extra minutes, I'm making less phone calls. And I'm going to be converting more calls. So stop having a supervisor with coffee breath screaming at me to make another phone call and to hang up on Prosper. He and I are having a fantastic conversation. He's about to recommend me to 10 of his friends. Why don't you tell Billy to calm down for a minute? And so you never rush an artist. And I always believe in magic. And so you just want to maintain that. Now, we also have the luxury of a quality control department. Our calls are recorded, so we can analyze the calls. There's something called KPIs, which are key performance indicators, but that's what I'm paying you to do. Prosper, I'm looking for you to use those incredible soft skills that you have, so we can talk about a ton of different things, and you become my best friend. And that's usually when I give the most points to my agents, because I can really tell that they're in the moment. They're just not carpet bombing and just going through the motions. And so if I can get somebody to that level of their career, then I've done my job.
Absolutely. I quite like that, because you keep referring to the 150 people that you work with within the call center, how, you know, some of them are inviting you to meals, and how that in and of itself creates that, you know, companionship at work, which so many call centers might lack. You know, there's extremes of maybe people having sat with a call center person or a customer service person for about 10 hours. And I don't think that is, there is a customer call that is very, very famous. The one from Zappos, you should look it up. They sat with a person for 10 hours and they just kept talking to them, calming them down, and up until that whole transaction was completed. And so many other people that are in other call centers, you know, just show up and then just want to get it over and done with. I think for them, it's actually how many calls can you hang up on before the person even answers hello, than actually talk to the person. But from what you're saying, it's completely different. You're taking these people on a journey. You're really opening them up to their soft skills. Now, for the uninitiated, or for those right in the back, what are these soft skills? And not only are they helping people over the phone, how else can they help people in real life?
Well, the first thing is they should choose campaigns that they feel good about. You mentioned earlier agents walking into an office and just trying to do their job, get a paycheck, and get the hell out of there. They shouldn't be there. And I know that this industry has a lot of burnout and it might seem monotonous, but if you have the skill set that you think you do, then you also have leverage and you should be able to choose. And so my environment here is it's interesting because I do compete against Amazon, HP, Intel, and Oracle. So somebody could leave me today and be hired tomorrow. Do I have leverage? Not really. It's like a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party. You always read these articles about a kid that shows up somewhere and no one shows up to his party, has no friends. And the market speaks. I can compete with these companies, but they have all the bells and whistles. What do I do differently? Well, we did mention the relationship building, and some people, Prosper, want to be anonymous. They want to be amongst thousands. So fortunately for me, if I'm only hiring a dozen people, I can be very selective. I can find people that are coachable, pen at the ready, almost like a squire to a knight. But here's the best part. I'm a straight shooter. If you're doing well, Prosper, I'm the first person there to high five you and give you public recognition. But I also call the balls and the strikes. I mean, if something's not working out, I'm going to ask if I can make a suggestion. Once I get your permission, I'm going to let you listen to your own self. And you'll realize that your timing is off, you're cross-talking, you're interrupting, you're shouting, or you're whispering, they can't hear you. And so self-analysis is self-improvement. And I just can't hit the ball and keep dragging Johnny. Prosper. There's a point to where you have to walk with me. You know, there's a certain sort of energy and vibration that needs to match. And so I'll give somebody an onboarding period. And I do realize that people are learning as they go along. But I mentioned a big word earlier, two of them actually, dedicated practice. You've seen it in all the movies. My favorite example is Daniel's son when he was doing dedicated practice in the Karate Kid so he can beat Johnny. And a lot of his dedicated practice was when Miyagi wasn't even around. I mean, yeah, I know the wax on, wax off and the painting the fence, fine. But there was a couple scenes where he was on the boat by himself and on that thing on the beach, on that post, doing his special at the end of the movie kick. And so the greatest thing ever is when a piano teacher knows that someone has been practicing during the week. And my dedicated Spanish teacher knew that my game was tight. And I know when these individuals here at the call center have extended their vocabulary, have worked on transitional sentences, right? I mean, these are the kind of anchors and bridges that you can do from island to island. And how about another thing to keep morale high? I believe in romantic deaths. What do you mean by that? Well, if you are capable of jumping clouds to where the first 30 seconds of any call, inbound or outbound, you're doing a company name spike or the person's name in a certain way is a spike. You're properly introducing yourself, figuring out how to do a positive escalation, right? And things like that. That's a win because it's almost like a perfect intro. Your body in conclusion doesn't even exist. Stop talking about a 10-minute phone call. These are 10 one-minute calls, or even better, my man, 20, 30-second calls. If you can handle that, you'll slice and dice these calls. And so I really want people to slow down and calm down and see where you're at the moment. Sometimes you take it from horizontal to vertical and you start asking open-ended questions. Most simplest one, I can double and triple questions for you. Not, hey, Prosper, do you like ice cream? Compared to Prosper, what type of ice cream do you like? Yeah, what type of ice cream do you like, Prosper? What is your favorite?
Well, chocolate chip, something with Ben and Jerry.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yo, Prosper, how many scoops do you get?
Ooh, depends on the day. 3 scoops for me and 2 scoops for my kids, and my kids don't like that.
Your audience loves you. What sort of toppings do you put on it, Prosper?
Chocolate sprinkles sometimes.
Very simple example. I hate yes and no answers. I love things that are explanation. You just gave me two or three sort of things. Triple scoop, I would have never guessed. Man, I will upsell you like crazy. You know what I mean? And so it really gives your audience a chance to cut some fat, to focus on where we're going, see where prospect, where your priorities are, so I can anchor in on that. It's a beautiful play. It's like a water skier behind the boat. And so you are allowed to lead the dance. I could care less. I mean, there are certain things that I need to, there are some advanced speaking that we do as well. There's a technique called mirror imaging. You really don't want to mirror image the tone unless it's empathetic and confident, but you do want to mirror image the speed and the speaking level, the sound. Because if I can match you, I can then gauge if you're spiking or dipping. And this is for first time reads phonetically. I'm not even focusing on your vocabulary. And so, besides doing my job and asking you these questions and moving conversations along, after about a month's worth of concentrated practice on these spikes or dips of this, we call it a phonetic micro expression reading. Okay. These are the sort of times, Prosper, when we ask tie downs and confirmation questions. I was talking about 30 seconds to 1 minute checkpoints. That's what we use it for, just to ensure that everything's cool and we can move forward. And so it's more engagement. And really, I've had people that say, yeah, they're busy and they don't have time. Next thing you know, we're on the phone for 20 minutes. I think a hang up is finite. I think that's definite. But if someone is not hanging up on you, you're riding that wave and holding on to that bull for dear life. And the greatest thing you can do, once again, is to bring in the distractions and keep it very focused on where you're at. And as I mentioned earlier, this positive escalation by talking about your assistant prior to a transfer can really build momentum and reduce defenses. So instead of saying, who's this? They're like, who's this? You can tell that they like you. So you can say, I'm so glad that you asked. My name is Richard Blank. You know what we call that? This is the buffer boomerang technique. That's how you readjust tones. Someone gives you a negative tone, you're like, listen, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. You can always throw it back at the people. They're always going to ask what your name is, what your company is, what you're selling. Got to let Kathy to calm down for a minute, Kathy. That's an excellent question. Once again, my company is Costa Rica's Call Center. I keep bringing it down and bringing it down. And so readjustments of tones with first-time reads. Strangers or friends you haven't met yet. Doing your due diligence and proper preparation, you're almost 90% there. The only thing you don't have yet is that handshake and introduction. And then it's reversed, almost like a reverse pyramid, where it's kind of dangling on the point compared to the base. I work opposite. I start the strongest, then do it that way. Listen, pyramids can balance on their point. You just got to find that balance, and you got to distribute that weight. And so if you're really focusing on 5 paragraphs from now, your third page in your script, trying to get that locked in appointment for Thursday at 2 o'clock, you're not in the now, you're going to miss it. And so you should never beg and hook or by crook these sort of appointments. They should all happen wu wei. They should happen naturally. So you don't get this, where people are canceling on you or just no calls, no shows. Once again, don't fill a pipeline with wood. You burn wood. You waste people's time and it ruins your morale. I'd rather have, as I mentioned before, a dirty dozen, a really solid day of solid leads compared to just carpet bombing all day. Now it's very difficult for the supervisor and for the agents to understand because they just were moving so fast and they're just having to get their numbers one at a time. When you hear those stories about people falling in love, it's crazy, it's wartime, or it's some party or some place somewhere, and all of a sudden 2 worlds collide, things slow super down. Next thing you know, 2 people are dancing all night. When the guy's like cleaning up at the end and, mopping the floor and the people are still dancing. And so, it's amazing how you could have the worst day to the best day, and then you could be distracted to being focused. So don't tell me. You just live that call for that 7 minutes, that 10 minutes, and let be be. And if people are behind you watching you, It's because they're envious of you. In fact, there is a good scene in The Wolf of Wall Street when Gordon is pitching stock in the beginning at that one place. And you have all these guys that are hanging around, and then he's on a normal phone call, and people are standing and watching him. And me, I go, you should be doing that when the call's done during a training session. Everyone should be working during working hours. So when people are standing around, hanging around, taking notes, yeah, I got you, and it's all good, and it's good for the movies. But it's like a gym. You just don't want people hanging around. People should be hitting the gym. They should be on the equipment. There should be momentum. I don't want moss on the rocks. I don't like things that stay still. And so my main critique to that scene is, why aren't people making calls as well? I was getting all pissed off at everybody that are just standing there watching them. And, the one guy said at the end, hey, how did you do that? If you listen to that 1 minute, 49-second phone call, all he does is just name drop the guy about 6 times, do some spikes, trigger words, transitional sentences, and tie downs. It's normal English. It's nothing too complex. And so really it's just about confidence on who you are. I mentioned earlier about choosing the right campaigns. You shouldn't have to walk in there and force yourself to be confident. If you got the most beautiful flower in town, it sells itself. Listen, if you go to the gym and you work out, and you and I were blessed with very good looks, it's easy. Life becomes a lot easier for you. And so you should put your chest out there. You should be confident. You should be bold, because tomorrow we shall die. Remember, carpe diem. Tomorrow is not guaranteed to anybody.
There's the day.
So I think if you're going to have your day today, you better really take the deepest of breath and put out there what you got, my man. Because if you wake up tomorrow and you get another day at it, look at me again. I already got my momentum. And I'm 51 years old. I haven't stopped living this kind of life. And so the greatest secrets that I can tell you and your audience, especially with your amazing name, is just to have that sort of mentality of being prosperous. What a name. Prosper. It's not like reward. It's not like wealth at the end. Prosper is a momentum word. And prosper doesn't have to be financial. It could be with friends. It could be spirituality, religious. It could be everything. You could be the most prosperous person in town because you're the most loved. And so I think your parents were brilliant by giving you a name that inspires. It's not a bragging name. It's allowing people to know and reminding them that you are wearing this sort of commitment to your ancestors back in Zimbabwe, your great, 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 great grandparents, right? You're keeping that tradition. And so maybe, and I'm not sure of this, but I know that certain traditions and cultures, like the Native American Indians will give you the most beautiful exotic name, like Dances with Wolves and stuff. So maybe in your culture, your family saw this in you, this bright baby boy that just popped out and was shining to the world and said, you know what? This is a prosperous child. And besides being successful himself, he needs to have a certain name to remind people to feel that way about themselves. Now, Richard's cool, and there have been King Richards and stuff, and you might call me Rich. But man, I wish I had the name Prosper. That is a cool name. And it just makes you think, my friend.
I appreciate that. It is actually a doing word. You leave into it and lean into being prosper. But let's not take away from you. You've been indicted into the Hall of Fame, Richard. Let's not take that lightly. So many people, they just seemingly show up in these places and are viscerally going nowhere, and they're winning a lot of races, and those races are to the bottom. Congratulations.
Sure.
Congratulations. Now, how has this sort of recognition sort of impacted your approach to, first of all, leadership, business, and just being Richard?
Thank you, Prosper, for bringing this up. This Hall of Fame is for my alma mater, Abington High School. I know I keep bringing that up. Now, I'm not just living vicariously through high school, wearing a Letterman's jacket and pretending like I'm 16. I mentioned before, these people changed my lives. They were excellent educators, my best friends in my life, and people that believed in me. Now, I left Philly when I was 18. The fact that I am considered to be a strong member of this community in Northeast Philadelphia is amazing to me. It's very humbling. I'm going to mention some names because my high school had some amazing people that graduated there. Now, you have Stephen Schwartzman from the Blackstone Group. You have Amar Bose that created all those amazing headsets. You have Ashton Carter, which was the Secretary of Defense for the United States. I don't know if you ever watched America's Funniest Home Videos, but we had Bob Saget that went to my high school. Michael Buffer, the ring announcer that said, "Let's get ready to rumble." We had Eddie George, who was there in my year till 10th grade, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner, and Sean Wood in my year as well that played in the NFL. So winners, amazing individuals. I mean, you're talking about serious players. And the fact that my name is with these individuals on the walls of this high school is amazing to me. Now, I do have a second language scholarship for seniors that are graduating and want to study languages at a university level. So I pay that forward as well. And why do I do this? It's because I can and I want to. And why leadership? Because I'm the bald, gray, old guy telling stories by the fireside. Man, I used to be 17. I used to be young. So I guess I'm expected to be that elder now. Now, listen, I have a lot of fun and I really enjoy life, but I want people to know that you can be successful in certain areas too. And so maybe what they did was instead of being such a leader in industry and in athletics and science, they chose me because I was the super duper long shot. Hmm? And I'm also so loyal to Abington and my friends. And it was a place that did change my life. And so being a leader is one that recognizes those that got me here. And I guess being a leader is just an example that's being able to repeat oneself. You know, I guess being a leader is getting up early and being responsible with payroll and my taxes and just creating a great work environment. I be honest with you, it's almost like Tom Hanks in the movie Big. You know, I still feel it's not imposter syndrome. I am an owner of a company, been doing this for 16 years, and I have a track record, but you know, I still see myself as just the young dreamer that wasn't sure where we were going. And you know, if you and I were sitting there at the lunch table and we're both telling stories about the girls we're going to marry and the adventures we're going to have and things like that, it just seemed out of reach. And now that you're there and you're in it, the problem, excuse me, the challenge that I see is to slow it down, to enjoy it. It's this way to this way. I got to stop this, stop for a second and look forward. And that's why there are certain things that I do for me time, besides working out in the gym every day or washing my convertible on Sundays and pinball marathons. I need to decompress, prosper, and I need to put that phone away. And if I'm able to have these sort of images and I can stream these images, I might be able to crack some codes and realize where the priorities are because phone is off the hook. I'm pulled in 1,000 directions. I'm writing checks constantly, credit cards out, doesn't stop. But you once again just need to check in with yourself just to make sure that you're not overextending. And it's not just financial, just overextending in regards to your health and your time and even how you treat yourself. Okay. And it's not about going out and buying, you know, a Rolex. That's not treating yourself. Treating yourself is giving yourself a chance to breathe and to take a look around like a hiker that scales the mountain. Look what you've accomplished and look with those with whom you brought along and how you've made individuals in your life proud. And so these are the things that assist me in sleeping at night and realizing that besides this that I've done, there will be other areas that I know I'm going to be going to, and I'll be prepared for that
Mm.
because I've had this experience. And oh, here's an interesting thing. Character during chaos. I mean, we're talking about all the home runs and the best times. What about the tough times? That COVID experience we had, or when a campaign reduces staff or even ends working with me. Well, if situations come up, the greatest thing I can do is to call my client and to let them know what's happening and have a solution for them. A lot of people avoid problems and put their heads in the sand. You can't do that. If it's latent and you get caught on it, they'll never trust you. You need to really be mature. And that's the price you pay when you run a company. That's not the fun part. That's the door in the kitchen of the dirty dishes that you got to wash. And so if you can handle that sort of pressure and take deep breaths and try to calm everybody down and explain what's going on and find those solutions, you'll probably be the starting quarterback and the top guy. Why? Because you have a steady hand during surgery. You're capable of landing the plane. It's almost like a soldier that doesn't get that sort of reaction anymore. They're used to it. Maybe, it's not the best example to use, but there is chaos and there is stress and there are bullets and explosions going around left and right. Who's calm and who's not? And so what I try to do is to really shed any sort of things that are just emotional and not important and really focus on what we need to do to resolve this issue. I give people the benefit of the doubt. I give people luxury of time. And I've also delegated. So I have IT directors, human resources directors, accountants, and attorneys that need to make certain decisions with me where I'm not well versed. I don't have that Cisco certificate. So I have to have the confidence when he's pressing the blue button. And so these are the sort of leaps of faith, my friend, that if you can surround yourself with the right people, then you can expand with your branches and your roots and you can grow a certain company.
Absolutely.
Because the worst thing ever is wearing all those hats.
Absolutely. I quite like that. I quite like that. You see, when you're mentioning all the people that came out of Philly and, all what they went on to do, the guy from the WWE, I think, who says, let's get ready to rumble, the person that created the Bose headphones. And I just thought of a fictitious character, Will Smith, as he went from West Philly all the way to Bel Air, and he keeps talking about what it was like, in Philadelphia for him, the cheesesteaks and things like that. So I was just getting a glimpse into what your world would have looked like. Now, for those that might be interested in the work that you're doing, you mentioned there's 5 campaigns that you would never take on board. First of all, give us the type of people that you would want to work with and how people can get on with you.
Well, it's got to be definitely legal. Right? That's number one. And number two, it has to be something where the agents want to do it. As much as you want to push a project on, they have leverage. If no one chooses to make your phone calls, it's not going to happen. But I also like preparation. I understand maybe it's a brand new pilot project, and I'm okay with that. I can assist you in writing a script. We can do the rebuttals together, email and voicemail templates, the whole shebang. But if you do have something that's plug and play, you got to be forthright with me. I got to know the real metrics. Don't tell me there's someone named Jasmine in your office that can do 50 an hour when the average talk time is 5 minutes. It just doesn't work that way. And so I like level playing fields. Give me all the resources to be successful. If you're lacking resources, I can make up for it or we can combine. And once again, it's really about keeping that open mind. It's an investment in the process. It's not home court advantage, it's virtual. But then again, we have the sort of infrastructure and resources you might not have. Also have the experience. So I'm looking for clients that need to do simple lead gen appointment setting. And I'll explain some of the clients we have. We work with transportation companies and law firms, movies and music, and travel companies, and people that work in real estate and all sorts of different ideas. I mean, through the years. And it's funny how industries change and where things move. But I mentioned before, I'm very selective. It's not that I don't want the business, but my parents have told me they're twice as proud of what I turn down than what I accept. And I really don't need some overzealous supervisor that screams and curses and could ruin the rhythm here. This is a very sweet and peaceful culture. Doesn't mean that they can't be brave and bold, but what you do in New York and Chicago might not work here. Okay. And so we just got to make sure that we have certain expectations that are, I like to work in a smart sort of way where it's specific, measurable, okay, agreed upon, realistic, and time frame oriented. Just don't call me on a Friday afternoon and say, hey, Richie, yeah, Prosper, I need 50 people by Monday. Come on, man. It's not happening. And it's just, you have to be realistic. And also, if you don't give me enough numbers, I expect at least 4,000 unique numbers a month on a 5-minute talk time. That's enough to put in a predictive dollar if I can flip that four to 600 phone calls a day. So if you're giving me a small list or an old list, or if your script is just so terribly straightforward where there's so many straight lines, there's no straight lines in nature. You need angles. It's too rigid. People are going to quit. And if sometimes people do not invest enough time to teach somebody, or they spend way too much time training things that aren't even necessary. And so for me, it's very important on the first day that the agents, prior to a training class, go to my game room to play some pinball with each other so they can hang out and have fun. That reduces their stress. I also do 2 hours worth of soft skills training on their first day so they can hang out with their boss. Why do I do it? Because I want to, and I'm going to be the only boss that does do that. And those that see it are the ones that stay. And then I have them stand up and do some role playing, which increases their confidence because of the public speaking in front of people. And I work on those soft skills. You're mentioning soft skills, sure. You pause before names and numbers for emphasis. Okay. There are trigger words in every sentence that should be spiked. And also, I believe in personal pronouns. You can't say the name Prosper every sentence. You're going to overkill it. So I'm going to say your or are. I give those quarter-second slides. That's a trigger word. That's a spike. Because these are non-visual conversations. I'm trying to get people back into paying attention to these sort of things. And so I like when people eliminate hedging, which is ums, ahs, okays. Because sometimes if I'm repeating an answer back to you, it's not great or okay or wonderful. It could be a terrible answer. So I sometimes suggest reading back certain answers in a military alphabet, or I'm sorry, in a monotone voice. So you don't show any sort of emotion to it, and just say, so you said 123 Main Street. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. And, just things like that. And it's just, once again, just showing active listening and engagement, just being excited. And if a company has something that's exceptionally cool, like ice cream, hockey sticks, you're allowed to let them know how much you love it. In fact, the largest account I have is a movies and music campaign. And when I was speaking to one of my favorite clients, of course, and he was asking me if I have any experience with classic movies. Isn't that funny? Humphrey Bogart's my favorite actor. I was whipping out things about him and Lauren Bacall and the Have and the Have Not and Key Largo. And I was talking about Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. I was going as far back as Basil Rathbone with Nigel Bruce in the 30s and 40s doing Sherlock Holmes. I know my Edward G. Robinson. I know my old schools. I knew it better than the client did. And I was letting him know how much I love these movies. And I almost dressed like them. So he says, unbelievable. At the end of the day, he called me. He goes, listen, I interviewed about 5 call centers. You're not the cheapest because the Philippine and Indias are cheaper than you. Okay. You're not the largest because you're only 150 strong. But I got to tell you something. First, I love speaking to the CEO. Second, you're the guy. I've never in my life heard someone that is more passionate towards this industry. If anybody is going to win this thing, it's through your 10% magic, because metrics are metrics. But if you can put that little special coach in there, that special scent in the store, so people buy stuff like cinnamon and apples, or like when you go to the mall and you smell the cookies or the cinnamon bun. So consider me like the cinnamon bun. The guy knew it. He knew perfectly well if I was this excited prior to a contract working with me, imagine when we do start working together. He knows I'm in it to win it. And so sometimes you give faith to the smaller company, to the bed and breakfast, to the guy that's starting out. Little do you know that they are going to love your campaign. It's not business anymore. I can love your project as much as you do because you're the owner of a company. And so to me, I'll always have someone that is more intellectually sound when it comes to IT, where they have a financial background and they can talk, stocks and finance and stuff. There's no one that's going to shine more than I do, or play pinball with their people, or did what I did moving from Philly to Costa Rica and long shotting it. Not saying I'm the only one, but people love that story. And they go, man, I'd rather hire a marathon runner than a college professor any day, because that's 10 times harder. And so I gain it on merit, damn it, not on price. Absolutely. And that's how I get the majority of my business, my man. They see right through it and they realize that they're going to win with me.
And it shows, and I can feel that. Now, how can people get in touch with you so they can learn a little bit more about your services and also maybe connect with you personally?
I do appreciate that. Why don't you buy a first-class plane ticket and come fly and visit me here in Costa Rica? I mean, it's beautiful here. And so we have some of the best surfing in the world, as you do in Australia. We don't have the sharks that you do. We have that. Anyway, I have a very large Facebook fan page. Costa Rica's Call Center is about 125,000 local Costa Rican Ticos. And so when this goes live, Prosper, you're going to have tons of new agents there. And just real quick, I just wanted to let you know that we are north of Panama, south of Nicaragua. Costa Rica is the only democratic society in Central America. Now, there's no standing army here. They put all their money back into education, so there's a 95% literacy rate. We have the best infrastructure here. We're known for medical and ecotourism. And I'm only just a couple hours from the United States. We're on Mountain Time Zone, so the majority of my clients are US and Canada. I mean, the proxemics is just right there. They're very attuned to the North American market. 500,000 expats live here. And so it's a wonderful place and a good run. And I can't thank you enough. I know a lot of your audience may not need telemarketers, but I want to shatter that misconception. It is a means to an end. If you have individuals that are making and receiving phone calls at your company, you will be able to build business. And there are certain ways to do it. And you have the technology today to really custom make this sort of introduction and relationship building. And so I'd be more than happy to review scripts or just talk to any of your audience and just to see what they're up to. But as I mentioned before, Prosper, I can't thank you enough. I had the best time on your show. You do amazing interviews. And as I say, I'd love to meet your audience and to pay it forward any way I could.
Absolutely. And I bet they would love to meet you too. I'll make sure that I put all those links in the show notes so that people will get a glimpse into your world and hopefully maybe buy that ticket, but not spend as much as Will Smith, who spent $6,100 on a cab fare from Philly to Bel Air. So obviously that wouldn't resonate right there. Now, Richard, I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour now, and I know talking is your game, and you get paid for talking and expressing yourself like this. But when we started the show, you were telling us about how you graduated in 1991, and you were that kid that was eager and hell-bent to learn Spanish and things of that nature. And if you obviously would have maybe had somebody like yourself show up, because what I believe now, because of all the work that you're now doing, with the scholarship that you're doing and the Hall of Fame that you've been now recognized, you're now a role model. You are now one person that a lot of people can look up to and really, really aspire to be, do and have your accomplishments. And, because representation matters. You know what I mean? So when somebody sees somebody who probably grew up in the streets of Philly, going up into the Hall of Fame and being recognized as somebody of your note, being a CEO in a foreign country, leading a team of 150 people, that is something that is quite remarkable. And you've given us, your strategy, you've given us your motivation and your spiel right now. Had you come across somebody like yourself in 1991, what would you have wanted that old Richard to tell that young Richard of what to expect in the future?
That you're going to lose your hair. So be prepared. Enjoy it now while you got it. That's the only thing. No, I'm only kidding. Hey, Prosper, not to be hard on yourself. Hey, little Richard, don't be hard on yourself. I say, really, old Richard? Yeah, little Richard. Why not? Well, it's because you shouldn't be. And when you say people aspire to be, I don't want them to be me. I want them not even to be like me. I want them to catch their own current. I want them to catch their own momentum. As I say, I'm not a rock star. I'm not a scientist, huh? But I admire those that hit their apex and they knew where they were going. But I knew their momentum and I knew their drive. And as I mentioned before, I think the most beautiful thing in this world is if somebody can express something inside and make it outside and create it. And so I will never put someone's spark out. I would let them know to be a little selfish. And you sometimes do have to think of yourself first before you can focus on others. And as I mentioned, it just wasn't a whirlwind or something that was pure fantasy. As a little boy, I kept getting this reinforcement of the language. So, I was chiseling away at my path. But, when people are young, they're impressionable and you're in your teenage years and your life is ahead of you. But I was willing to die with my boots on, Prosper. I was willing to do it. And when you make that sort of serious commitment with yourself, you have to realize that it is a forced march. It might take some time. And so this was not instant gratification. I needed to know that this painting is going to take a long, long time. And you asked me the question earlier, that moment when my life was changing. It was that moment, I guess, I decided to be a Spanish major. I was going to drop all that cash, go to college and study it. Imagine if I came out and I couldn't speak it. What a joke. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. But then again, it's very complex learning a second language. Might be a nice guy. I'm not the smartest guy. And so I really needed to immerse myself and I needed to live it and really dive into that deep end. That's the only way I could do it. I didn't have that photographic memory and languages didn't come as easy to me as others. And I didn't grow up with people speaking Spanish in my home. And so I started late. I started in my teens. But as I say, I don't want people to put out others' flames and fires. And even if it's small, it could still be contained, where you could still just make sure that it's being managed and try to make fun. Because if learning a second language was a chore, it'd be terrible. But I used to enjoy music and movies. And my favorite was just to hang out with my friends and go to a mall or anywhere. And I just kept asking what words were, explanations. And that was a beautiful thing. It's almost like an architect. They can look of the weight distribution of buildings and know certain styles. A person that cuts hair for a living knows what was done to get that fade and that color. And if you're a linguist, it's amazing how much brighter the world is. And it's incredible what you're capable of doing. And it's kind of funny here too. I use it as an advantage. I'll play ignorant from time to time just to gauge if people are being facetious with me or being nice with me. I don't do it all the time. I'm usually speaking Spanish, but if there's a situation where I need to check the temperature, I'll pretend like I don't speak a word of Spanish just to see if they're on my team or not. And if they're not, then guess what? We'll catch you next week. But if they are, I'll be like, hey, sabes que yo hablo español. They're like, my man. I'm like, exactly. And so here we go from there. And so I use it as a defense too, to protect me. And so it's interesting how someone will meet another individual and not think that they know an instrument or a language or life. And that's complete ignorance. And so I like to think that if I meet somebody, why don't I just wait to see what they are capable of giving me compared to me assuming? Because you know what happens when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And I'm not assuming anything. Sorry, I didn't mean to curse on your show. There we go.
That's all right.
Sorry, Mom.
I know, Mom is watching, by the way, and I really,
man, I was so good the whole time.
We almost got there. We almost got there. Now, Richard, obviously, you talked about losing your hair and everything else, but that's just the epitome of being a pinhead. You know what I mean? You already have the classic pinball machines, and you've leveled up the game. You know what I mean? You've really clocked the game. So what can people expect? What is next for Richard now that you've done the the unthinkable, and you're just on this way, and you haven't nudged the game at all. You've done it fair and square, and everybody else knows and has seen, and there's proof that you've put in the work. What's next?
I'm going to write children's books. And I love stop motion animation. So I might start goofing around with that too, because I like clay and things like that. But why not? As I say, once again, I think like a 10-year-old, might as well start writing some books like it. So see where we go from there. But yeah, that should be fun for me. And, I'd like to potentially just start traveling the world and living in Airbnbs so I can experience what small towns are like all over the world. But, it's about taking up more instruments and doing more art classes. I always enjoyed those things back in the day. And now that I have the time, I'm going to do it more. And you do what you like, and you should just do it that brings you fulfillment and not pressure. Like, I'm a half decent golfer. I'm not going to tell you my handicap, but when I go play, I don't like to keep score. Why? Because it'll ruin my round. I just want to enjoy myself and hit some good shots and have some fun. And so I'm that sort of cat. I like to click heels. I don't want to overanalyze and ruin the moment. Whatever happens then, it was a beautiful day. And it's very nice to have gotten to that stage in life. So if I could have gone back, as I mentioned, don't be hard on yourself. Don't misinterpret things. Maybe if you can write a draft, not send it, sleep on it. So maybe the following day, you can say you're sorry, make amends, or make nice and peace with things. Because I don't like ultimatums and I don't like deal breakers. And I hate when little things turn into big things, and it could have been prevented. And now you're looking for a cure. You don't have a friend anymore. And so these are the sort of maturity and impulse control things, Prosper, that you and I had to deal with as we were growing up and growing older.
Absolutely. I value the time that we've spent today on the show, man. And to our viewers, there you have it. A truly inspiring journey and valuable insights, that have been shared by Richard Valank, the man himself, the CEO and Hall of Famer.
Remember, listen to your In Excess.
Absolutely. And if we've got any In Excess fans, just reach out to Richard, and let him know that you really, really enjoyed this show. And if you're looking for top-notch BPO services with a personal touch, be sure to check out Costa Rica's Call Center. And, reach out to Richard, because he's the CEO that's going to, help you reach your audience in a way that your competitors would not be able to. All right. Now, Richard, I really appreciate you for having us, being on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you on the Online Prosperity Show. And until next time, bye for now.